There are three global patterns when it comes to data architecture in the world, and every serious organization in the world follow these patterns. What are the patterns, and what actually making me to do this video? So I've been working lately around data strategy, AI strategy the past few months, and one of the things in data strategy is building a data architecture. What is data architecture? How data gets in and go out. So how the organization collect data, how do they manage data, how do they store the data, and how does it share to consumer or for business understanding. And one of the things I realize is this. So the three pattern is we have the centralized, we have the federated, and we have the data mesh. So these are three patterns across the world. And mostly, to be candid, Africans are still don't even belong to any. Most of Africa don't belong to any of this. Some are actually scaled to some of the patterns accidentally that they don't know. So the what I'm doing is I was making some research because I worked on some projects, and I realized because I was the lead on the project on how can we manage data, which is the data architecture. And some of the bottlenecks we encountered, me and my team, was we have some data reside in Europe, we have some data reside in US, we have some data reside in South Africa. And these people have different policies, which are different policies regarding to the data of those people because those are multinational companies. And we need some data to actually get some analysis done. And I know how long it takes, which is now operational efficiency to what you need to deliver. So I was like, okay, how can we actually approach this when it comes to this? You having all of this because one of the things that actually been even till now is building a centralized platform. That's what I've known. But I see some operational efficiency, I see some bottlenecks that I actually have not even encountered before. I'm like, okay, how is that? Are there people that actually go through this or have put this? Because if I'm looking at this, how Google doing their data architecture, how is Netflix, how is Spotify, all these big organizations, big fours, are they are in different countries. How are they managing and doing these policies? Because if you're Microsoft in Nigeria, yeah, and they're getting some data, Nigeria has their own data policy. NDPR has a policy that they give that okay, some leaders cannot go outside of Nigeria. US has that, EU has that. So how are they navigating all of this? So as I was making some, I came across this book by Dehghani, Data Mesh, and I found that book super interesting. Actually, I've not finished it, but I recommend it. And he actually gave me some views into doing some data architecture. And mostly majority of the country in the world are still in the centralized one, which is we are trying to unify data. And let me break what the three patterns of data architecture is. The first one is centralized. What does centralized mean? Centralized is even what everyone is doing, and I've been working with all my life. And majorly everybody has been working in data. If you are a lead or you are head of data strategy or you are a data lead, data management or data governance officer in an organization, that is also actually been working with mostly every time. So if you're a practitioner, you're an analyst, these are things you actually can watch and build when you get to that level of being a lead in a data team or developing a strategy for this. But your own is you consume data, you just see where the data comes, the data engineer brings the data for you, analytical engineer put it into those. So all those processes that data engineer till you as a data analyst does is centralization because they're getting data from somewhere, cleaning it, putting it into one platform, which is the pattern of data architecture, which is what has been over the years until I started leading a data team and saying some things, drafting some strategy and saying some bottlenecks. So that is one of the things of centralization, which means the data team owns the data, manages, store it, and do all of things. Every other people in the organization that needs data comes to them, raise a ticket. If they need it that day or they want to make a decision that day, they need to actually wait because there might be other requests I need to do before the data team extract the data out for them and give them. The second one is federated. Federated is one of the things, it's one of the recommendations in the data mesh, but there are some organizations that are already doing that. which means federated is where you have a central platform where everybody in the organization owns their data. For example, this is their sales team because they are the one generating that data for the sale. So they are in control, they are in there. So all of it can be in the platform, but they don't need to actually raise a ticket or wait for the data team to have access to it to make their own decision they want to make. Same for finance and vice versa. But one of the things in federated is the more it goes, the governance gets worse because it will be hard to regulate and there will be some bottlenecks also. That's the only thing there, but it's actually saves time for operational efficiency in terms of things I'm looking at. And the third one is data mesh, which is the one I think it's been adopting over the years. I found the book, I think the book was first published in 2015 or 16 by Dehghani. Sorry if I didn't pronounce that well. So I feel like, oh, this has actually been for over a decade. That's super awesome. Actually, the case study was around Netflix and Spotify. They were growing and expanding, and they are finding centralized platform as a bottleneck because let's say people in Germany need the data and they need to actually raise tickets to people in California. So California needs to actually solve what they need to do internally before they now answer people in Germany. So it's kind of operational efficiency around that. So that's why the case study around data mesh goes. And in Dehghani's framework, he put 4 principles, which is the first one is domain as ownership. The second one is data as a product. The third one is self-service ownership, and I think the last one is around federated governance and all, which I found so super insightful. I recommend the book actually, but one of the things I still found is like it's not actually applicable to some people here in some most of the countries, especially Africa, because yeah, I'm working from Africa here and I'm speaking from Africa, so it doesn't actually applicable because Africans, some of African companies doesn't even belong to all of these three of data architecture I'm seeing across global world. Some actually have moved past some accidentally that they don't even know, and some are still trying to be centralized. So it's kind of things, and there's a pattern in the move of how it's actually want to go. After I look at it and I deduce, so you actually need to be centralized first before you hit the bottleneck. You now move to federated. What I found out as I was saying, why this was come up was, oh, we have this, and you're working on this project, and I was the lead in the data team. I tried putting some data architecture together, and I found these people they have some data sets in South Africa, data set in California, and they have data sets in Europe, and moving all of these, there's some data we need that we need to actually wait request. They need to actually put their legal because of the policies around us. So like, okay, centralized platform. Even though there is platform here, which is still centralized, but to get some things because of the location you are, region you are, affects that, which is the policy around that. And I was making my research where I found data mesh, and I found it interesting. So one of the things around I think Africa doesn't have is Africa doesn't even belong to all these um, 3 levels of the global data architecture that I found out, because Africa is still leapfrogging. There is a leapfrog, which is the giant African companies. They've moved past all this fragmentation. They have even moved past centralization, but they still have some bottlenecks around that. The other thing that I would say Africa has is the unstructured one, which is the fragmentation. There are still majorly companies in Africa that, not even only Africa, in Europe also, they are still working on fragmented data, which is in where they want to have it. These people have where they want to have it. So everything is still in silo, which is they've not put it together. And the third one I would say is the unstructured one. There are still major organizations in Africa, even top organizations too, that each of these departments or the organization is working on structured data, which is some data might be in spreadsheets, some data might be in Excel, some data might be in an application form or anything that want to be. So Africa is still facing this reality, and not only Africans, even company in Europe, company in the West are facing this also. So these are things around that. For a company to actually reach for data architecture platform, I would say is a layer which is centralized, federated, and the data mesh. That's how I put the layer. So a company is going, which is you're going into large company, the more you move elevated from each of the layer, centralized, federated, and data mesh. But I found the data mesh super insightful, as I mentioned, because I actually hit a bottleneck and I was curious. How does it actually apply if you are centralizing data across all of this? And that's where Zamak Dehghani book, which is data mesh, put to me, and I deduce a discipline I will call data product discipline. So even though all of this happens, I still find federated data architecture amusing and interesting, which is because if a department, let's say marketing, pull a data, they need to send the request before all of this, it's affecting their efficiency, all of that. But what if these people are actually in charge of their data? And in one of the data strategies, one of data literacy, apart from data governance, we'll talk about the governance, maybe not in this video, but data literacy, there will be a data team, and they work in hand in hand because I get most of domain knowledge. So I'll pick that in the Dehghani stuff. So in the principle of the data domain ownership is saying the first thing is domain ownership. Let people that has the domain knowledge owns their data because they are the one that knows how they use the data. So marketing and the marketing data because they are the one that generate the data and put things out that bring in data. So if you have a centralized one, which is a one data team that handles all of this thing, manage and everything, don't have the domain, know the useful of those things than people that actually bring in the data. So when they want to use data, they might actually even not bring all the column and they might clean me some data. But these people, one of the things that these are the data products owner is every company should have data literacy. So every organization, every department in the company should be data literate. They should know what their data stand for and know how to handle it. So it's kind of expensive and kind of low cost effective for a company to actually do that. So one of the things we can do, one of my ex bosses that I actually enjoy then is we have like at that time I think we were four when I was working in a company in Lagos then. She has where a data person is in a core team of a department. Let's say for me now I work mostly side with supply chain and logistics department. So I understand because I work hand in hand with them, understanding their needs and what they need to do. So I was able to acquire much of domain and how the data is being used in their department. Another person working with finance, another person working marketing and sales. I work hand in hand in all of this. The domain people know the type of metrics and the type of data that they need to know. So when I'm communicating to the data engineer and analytical engineer, I'm giving them the exact thing that they can actually like to, even though we're in a centralized platform. But that's one of the ways to actually save the bottleneck and the cost of data literacy because imagine a department you have someone to be data literate and handle that data in that department, same thing finance, same thing, all of that. So that's one of the things we do in Africa AI help organization and C-suite executive leaders to be able to set data governance and data strategy that will help and push the organization forward. So that's one of the things that is being, I was saying, data product ownership. But let's go back to Zamak framework, which is in the data mesh. You say domain as ownership, which is a federated style of data architecture where every department owns their data and know what the data want to do. But as I mentioned, there's a bottleneck in that part. If you actually look at it, governance, because there'll be some kind of structure and it will treat the data well, but there will be governance stretch around that, unlike when it's centralized, where the data team will be the owner of everything. So now every single department needs to take responsibility for their own. That's the first thing about domain ownership or data mesh, which is Zamak Dehghani was proposing in his principle. Domain as ownership, which is every domain owns the data and know how to use the data. Comes back to the strategy, the data literacy. The second one in his own principle was data as a product, which means those people, because they understand their data, their own domain, they can actually build a product for the consumer with what they understand about all those things. Instead of the data people in centralized, it can actually not happen there. So they instantly work hand in hand to that. The third one is self-service because they own this, they can do their own self-service where organization will help everybody, business data to do self-service. Everybody can access data and all of that. It still comes out to governance. And the fourth one is federated governance, putting all of these things together. So that's how he applies it. But as I'm looking at it, I'll be like, okay, this does this apply to Africans? How does it apply to Africa? Because Africa actually is still even trying to solve the fragmentation. So most of companies, SMEs in this world, are still trying to solve the fragmentation process, trying to put their data in a centralized platform. Well, the reason why this comes to me is because I work in I work in a project that requires large data and I have different things that have gone past fragmentation. They are now centralized, but the bottleneck to the centralization of them because you are a company with over 1,000 of things. So one data team, two data team can actually manage that. So they have a federated, which is in different branches, they have different data teams that handle requests in those and policies that go with that. And that what brought this up. So what would I say for Africans that watch if you are SMEs in the world or you are African companies or you are African lead, head of data strategy, data lead, or anyone you belong to, CEO, C-suits, that you make decision in the company and guide the company how to go. So as I mentioned, I classify Africans into three tiers. And where do you belong? I said the leapfrog, which is the giants that move past fragmentation. Their data is central. For example, Flutterwave, Paystack, they work in Africa, they find Africa here, which is different policies around all of that. And they have put all of this because one of the things, most of them don't use on premises. So you only find on-prem data around banks, around healthcare. So most of the data reside in cloud, which there are some policies and it's still centralized and move beyond centralized because it can actually be query and has that federated in that one. So their Taiwan is a leapfrog, which is the top companies in Africa, big size companies, not even only across the world too. In US, this is how they manage their stuff because everything is in cloud, put everything centralized, which is the first part. So they're fragmented as the small business are trying to like put these people have their own data in folder, and that people have their own local drive, and that people have their own in cloud, and that people have their own. So they need to put everything together into one place again. That's fragmented. I would say the second part of Africa companies. And the third one is unstructured. They don't even know. Some of them are still in paper. They're still trying to move past all of this. So where do you belong in all of this if you are watching this? But one of the things, as I mentioned, that I would say shield was data product ownership, which is data as a product. One of the principles I found in Dehghani's book, Data Merge, is let every department treat their data as a product, just like how they handle their customer, their SLAs. Let them know, which is the data literacy. Every person in the organization should be data literate and how to handle data. And that's one of the things, as I mentioned, Africa AI helped us. How can you handle data? How can you do all of this? So if you're in any of this time, you need all of that, you can just put a comment or reach out. You find my contact in all of that. If you're a data lead or you're a C-suite watching this. And that's nothing. Let everybody treat their data as a product. And what does this mean? What it means is name your data, name your ownership, let sales handle sales, marketing, finance handle marketing. So the second one is let them build things with it. You can reach out, do, but the governance is one of them. We'll talk about governance data. What I'm proposing is data product discipline. It is not about not knowing data, it's a culture change where everybody manage and stay accountable to what they do. So the governance will move to accountability where everybody is regulated. So it will not be only data team, which is the one that put together or being responsible for all the data that comes in. So the governance will now be let everybody own their data, take responsibility, and say come back to data literacy. Those are one of the things I would say about being data products discipline, which is you name your data, which every department understand their data. They are the one that actually let know how the data comes in, and they are the one making use of it for the business goal. The other one is they should actually manage it well. They need to know how to clean what data teams are doing. They might not need to know, but they need to handle the data, clean the data, name the data, organize the data. There should be a governance that will go around that. These are things that will call around data product discipline. After I actually like read some of the part of the books, and I feel like okay, yeah, these are ways that actually can improve. So there are some companies that actually like to say it doesn't even matter whether you are fragmented or unfragmented. This applies to every single person. And that's how the world is scaling because you're generating more data and people are expanding around all of this. So you don't face all this policy bottleneck. So if you need more clarity around that, you can talk more around it. You can put it in your comments, put your idea, put your opinion in your comment. Let's think about this. I already mentioned why this comes through for me as I was working on something I need to put together. So that's what I will have for this video today. So if you find anything, you take one or two in this data architecture and how to handle the bottlenecks today, you can put it in the comments. Follow me for more because I'll be talking more around the strategy, the leading of data, implementation of data, implementation of AI in African organization and global world organization. So give me a follow, subscribe to my channel, follow me on social page. I talk more around my social page where you can put more opinion. But I want you to put this in the comment section too if you find this. So I still remain mobile, so I run Africa AI Hub, and I do things also around data. I do things around things that will actually improve business, and this is one of my days on what I figure out by building solutions. And I believe if you're a lead or you're moving to a lead position, you're a senior executive, you'll find this helpful. So thank you. See you in another video.